Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. It is April 2nd, the day after April Fool's. That's right. We are not giving up Crime Talk. We love you all too much. Anyway, it's Saturday. Let's do the weekly recap of all the top stories throughout the week. We'll see you next time. Monday, March 28th for the docket. Hashtag arrest Will Smith. Okay, we've all probably seen or heard by now the slap heard around the world. Take a look at this.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? that was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow.
This is the video from the somewhat shocking moment at the Oscars where Will Smith walks up and smacks Chris Rock in the face after he made a joke about Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. So Chris Rock was on stage presenting the award for Best Documentary, but before he read the nominees, he made a joke about Jada's shaved head, saying he couldn't wait to see G.I. Jane 2. Well, Jada didn't like the joke. Apparently, neither did Will Smith. It's not a fashion choice. She has a medical issue that apparently results in her hair loss. Well, then Will Smith then storms up on the stage, smashed Chris Rock across the face, leaving Chris Rock somewhat stunned. And he states, "Wow, Will Smith just smacked the blank out of me," he says. Will yells at Chris, "Keep his wife's name out of his mouth." Chris eventually regains his composure and continues presenting the award. Now, Will Smith seems to have people on his side, including Denzel Washington and Tyler Perry, who were seen comforting Smith during a commercial break. Will was not escorted out after assaulting Chris Rock, and not too long after the smack, Will Smith won an Oscar for the Best Actor. Then Will Smith gets up and gives some sort of a rambling, bizarre speech where he tries to defend his actions while fighting back tears. Towards the end of the speech, Will says, "Love will make you do crazy things." But not everyone seems to have the same opinion about that smack. Hashtag arrest Will Smith is trending on Twitter, and people call for the actor to face assault charges. And that's what I want to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, because the LAPD sees an incident of an assault, unprovoked, I might add, where self-defense and consent is not an issue as a possible defense. They see on international TV, sees Will Smith go up and hit Chris Rock. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big Chris Rock fan. I like Will Smith, but he was wrong. Well, the LAPD says that Chris Rock does not want to file charges. My response to that is, so what? I've not seen a case where the police are aware of a crime and the victim says, "I don't want to press charges, don't go forward with it." This case can be proven. It's on video. Chris Rock, the victim, normally the prosecutor would like to have the victim show up and say, "That's the guy that smacked me in the face and caused me pain," right? The elements of the case. But in this particular case, it can be inferred by circumstantial evidence based upon the smack as well as Chris Rock's reaction. And if you've ever heard of an excited utterance, this was an excited utterance. This is not hearsay, so it would be admissible as to the statements made by Chris Rock if he didn't show up at court, because it was a statement made basically before he could really react and have time to think about it. And so it would be admissible. So the reason that the LAPD is stating that they're not going to file charges because Chris Rock doesn't want to go forward with charges or fill out a police report is really of no relevance. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. If the victim had any say in the matter, there probably would be no domestic violence cases ever, because people would say, "I don't want to do that out of fear of retaliation. Oh my gosh, how am I going to support myself?" Anything along those lines. I would submit to you The only reason why Will Smith is not being charged for assaulting somebody on national and international TV, well, it's a little bit of privilege. Apparently, the Hollywood elite have a little bit special legal system for them that wouldn't apply to you and me. Let me give you a quick example. If you or your spouse or somebody didn't like something that took place, maybe at your kid's soccer game or baseball game or a school play, and you went up and smacked somebody because you didn't like what somebody said, you would be charged. And the fact that it was on video would be more likely that you would be prosecuted. So, hashtag arrest Will Smith. Let me know in the comments what you think should happen. And it wasn't staged. Let's just cut to the chase. It wasn't staged. Next on the docket, Alex Murdoch. What do we say? Follow the money. Well, guess what? People are following the money, and I love it because it shows that the good old boy club is basically being dismantled down there in the low country of South Carolina. Heck, it may be so cleaned up pretty soon, maybe even I could go down there and live again. Well, let's see what we're talking about today. The Yemassee, South Carolina police chief, a guy by the name of Greg Alexander, has allegedly received a $5,000 loan from Alex Murdoch. You know, because Alex Murdoch had all that disposable income because he didn't owe anybody any money, right? So he loaned $5,000 to the police chief on July 9th of 2021. Wow, what happened just a couple of days? Oh, that's right. About 4 weeks after the double homicide of his wife Maggie and son Paul at the family hunting property. Now, the police chief said that the loan went to his parents, but he was unable to back up any paperwork or documentation, and he also said he wasn't sure if his parents had paid Mr. Murdoch back. I'm sure if he had, the attorneys suing Mr. Murdoch would take that money and put it in a fund for all of his other victims. Well, Alexander and Murdoch are apparently lifelong friends. You know, and one thing I say, Mr. Murdoch, he sure does have a lot of friends. Have you noticed that? At least when he was in power and sprinkling all that money around. I wonder why all his friends haven't posted that $7 million bond. Well, Mr. Alexander, the police chief, is known as the fixer for the family and its influential allies, and how convenient that he just happens to be the police chief. Now, although not confirmed, some locals believe that Mr. Alexander, the police chief, may have been at the Murdoch hunting property immediately after the homicide, despite the property being outside of his jurisdiction. Now, as you may recall, Alex Murdoch is considered a person of interest in the double homicide case of his son, Paul, and his wife, Maggie. Now, there's also been reports that investigators may have evidence that link Alex Murdoch directly to the shootings. We'll give him the presumption of innocence. There's just reports. But Mr. Alexander, the police chief, is currently running for Hampton County Sheriff and is on the ballot for the Democrat primary, along with Anthony Bubba Russell and Chauncey Solomon. Now, Alexander's campaign received a $1,000 contribution from Alex's brother Randy on May 12th of 2021, about 4 weeks before the double homicide. And a few weeks before that, Alexander received another contribution from John E. Parker, who is part of the Murdoch law firm, Peters, Murdoch, Parker, Ellsroth, and Dietrich. Mr. Parker was not the only PMPED lawyer who gave money to Mr. Alexander. PMPED lawyers Daniel Henderson and Lee Cope gave $500 and $1,000 respectively to Sheriff Alexander's campaign. Police Chief Alexander's campaign. That's not all. Austin Crosby, who's also been linked along with others to the Murdoch deceased drug smuggler Barrett T. Bulware, gave $1,000 to Alexander's campaign as well. And on the same day, an attorney that works at the firm gave $1,000 to the campaign. Mere coincidence? I mean, you got to love a firm that really gets behind all that. The way they can almost say, hey, let's make all these contributions so we don't exceed the limit. We'll just spread it around among the firm. Wow, it's amazing how that works, isn't it? On March 29th of 2021, Alexander campaign also received another $500 from attorney Corey Fleming, who, well, as you may recall, was recently indicted in connection with the alleged participation in Murdoch's scheme to steal insurance money from the Satterfield family. Now, Chief Alexander has denied any wrongdoing in connection with the Murdoch family. In an interview posted on his campaign Facebook page on March 11th of this year, he asserted he was a man of integrity who would not participate in a cover-up. That's why all the locals think, apparently, that he's the fixer for the family, because the public doesn't talk or know anything, right? Anyway, his campaign page on Facebook includes a slogan, "I am not a cat. I don't cover up no doo-doo." Catchy. That's catchy, isn't it? Everyone should think about using that. Barry Morphew had a hearing today, and we weren't able to get it on WebEx because the judge is making everybody show up in person. But it looks like it was kind of a draw today. Now, a couple of things that did come out of the hearing are that the judge rules that a veterinarian that was expected to be called as an expert witness and testify how tranquilizer materials affect animals will not be allowed as an expert witness. I didn't have to be there in that courtroom to know that that makes complete sense. Who cares how tranquilizer materials affects an animal when we're talking about how it allegedly affect a human, unless that veterinarian has conducted tests or some sort of research as it relates to humans in various doses and quantities and various weights and sizes. It's simply not relevant. So that makes complete sense. And the prosecution wanted a canine handler to not testify in trial after learning today that he made a report but did not disclose it. Ooh, ouch. So we'll have to see how that shakes out as well. Now, there's going to be a Shrek hearing. A Shrek hearing is basically to hold a hearing to decide whether expert witnesses can testify at trial. That's going to be set for April 29th. Remember, we start the trial first week in May. Let's get real, people. This thing is moving along quickly, and we'll see if some of the sanctions that the defense was asking for are actually ever going to be granted. I think it's an extreme remedy, but as I said, what can the judge do? He can gut the prosecution's case. Now, apparently the prosecutor also showed up with a new district attorney. This district attorney appears to be on loan from the 18th Judicial District, a guy by the name of Grant Grossenbauer. Don't know him, never met him. Maybe I'd recognize his face if I saw him, but I do not know. There was also some evidence presented regarding the canine that arrived on the scene, and apparently the canine could not pick up a scent from Suzanne Morphew at the scene where the bike was in fact located, which is probably one of the issues as it related to the whole canine handler. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. Now, here's what I find that's interesting. I've often said if you can control the definitions of words, you can control the conversation. Well, Iris Itan is doing this, and you can see where this is going. She said she wants to get things set straight. "I want to get the facts straight," she quoted. "It's not a no-body homicide. It's a missing persons case." So the defense isn't even conceding that Suzanne Morphew is deceased. Interesting. Except, of course, when it comes to resolving the estate of Suzanne Morphew so that Barry Morphew could sell the property and then have her declared deceased. So we'll check. We'll obviously have to check that out. And one of the expert witnesses the defense wants to strike is a forensic nurse who looked at photos of Barry Morphew's scratches on his arms and hands, but did not meet and examine Barry Morphew in person. That'll be determined on April 29th. Unless this nurse has some sort of greater knowledge or training as it relates to scratches and can somehow tell if that was a human scratch or was that a guy that does landscaping that maybe gets scratches on his arms from bushes or other things. I'm not sure we're going to see that nurse testify at trial. At least my first instinct is that is not going to be the case. So I think it was basically a draw. Nothing bad happened to the prosecution today. They've got a new district attorney out there trying to help because it seems like everybody keeps leaving on this particular case that works for the prosecution, including obviously their lead investigators. that they don't like what they're going to have to say so that they get them kicked off the case. We'll see how this goes. We'll still give Barry Morphew the presumption of innocence. Naomi Irion. She is a young lady missing in Nevada. Well, unfortunately, it is not good news to report. The remains of the missing teenager, Naomi Irion, were discovered in a remote area of Nevada 17 days after she was abducted from a Walmart parking lot. Now, officials say they found the body at a gravesite in an undisclosed area after receiving a tip that led them to the rugged mountain location about 150 miles from where she was in fact abducted. Now, her body has been transported to the Washoe County Medical Examiner's Office for an autopsy, and the suspected kidnapper, now possibly suspected murderer, Troy Driver, he appeared in court yesterday where he was charged with first-degree kidnapping. Now, Mr. Driver is 41 years old, and he made his initial appearance in the Nevada jail via Zoom. His bond is set at $750,000. Hundreds of volunteers had joined in searches across the vast desert area over the past 2 weeks looking for Miss Irion. Now, the Churchill County and Lyon County Sheriff's Department, which has been working closely on Miss Irion's case, issued their condolences to her loved ones. And in a criminal complaint filed Wednesday, prosecutors alleged Mr. Driver did abduct Naomi Irion and did hold her or detain her for the purpose of committing sexual assault and or for the purpose of killing her. Now, the next court date is now set for April 12th to decide whether there's sufficient evidence for him to keep the case in court. We anticipate, more than likely, homicide charges will be filed as well, depending on the outcome of the autopsy, as well as any physical evidence that may link Mr. Driver to Miss Irion's death. Lauren Pazienza. That's right. She is going home. Her mother paid the $500,000 bond with a check 3 days after she was allegedly taken to jail. And Lauren Posienza is facing manslaughter and assault charges in the death of an 87-year-old New York vocal coach by the name of Barbara Gustern. Pazienza allegedly shoved the elderly woman and called her a biatch just outside her Chelsea home. The following day, after police had identified her and released photos of her leaving the scene, Laura Pazienza turned herself in after weeks of hiding out at her parents' Long Island estate.